Everyone and their great grandmother knows by now that if Vincent Chansard does one of these, then there's a good chance he did some firework for an episode of One Piece. And lo and behold, oh my goodness, we have ourselves a phenomenal fight between Luffy, Monkey D, Luffy, and Kizaru. Fantastic work by Vincent Chansard. One of the best we've seen from him. And that's saying something because he's done some really damn good work for the series. Here we have ourselves, on his Twitter account, a run through of why he did what he did during that phenomenal fight sequence between Luffy versus Kizaru. Kizaru is diving towards the water. He has the sort of rainbow effects through the cloud. Yasa Kani no Magatama comes back at Luffy, shine lights around Luffy. Luffy's like, and starts freaking out.
End of flashback.
And then from there, they proceed to dive into a cloud, and then, all sorts of good stuff happening. All sorts. Just rewatch it, man. Just rewatch it. Yeah. It's outstanding. Even among some of the greatest shows out there for animation. Oh, it's one of the best. Now, here is his thought process. And he did the same thing, I recall, for his fight sequence with S-Hawk versus Zoro and Luffy as well. Like a little bit of Luffy in there. So let's go right through it, step by step, piece by piece, and let's see what he was cooking with in his brain. You know the drill. Here are some of my notes on Luffy versus Kizaru scene I did for Matsumi-san episode with Tu-san, which is Tu Young-se, I believe, and Sukada-san as Seisaku. Words I don't know what that means yet. I plan on learning Japanese at some point, but some point could be much further along the road than I first thought. Now, final product is a bit different from the first rough, so some of my notes became irrelevant, but still, here it is. So, as usual, before doing a fight, I thought about the meaning of it, how it's a way of showing the difference between how Luffy was before and how he is now. So, of course, this is a pre-time sleep of Luffy, Shimoni Archipelago back then. They just got dipped and crushed. But now, Luffy, no, he built different. He built on that Nika diet, and that Nika diet ain't no joke. But even more than that, this fight is a clash between two types of light. Natural sunlight versus artificial man-made light. Egghead has this strong theme going on. The artificial versus natural. Freedom versus obedience. Order versus chaos. And this fight fits right into it. There are deeper themes and meanings here that Oda has in many arcs. And it looks like Vincent Chansard really thought about the themes of the arc itself and then implemented those themes into the fight itself. Luffy's opponents have always been like flipped versions of himself. They share some trait with him, but they're also very different. Fair. When Kizaru first showed up in the manga, I always wondered why this light was yellow. In my head, light's supposed to be white, referring to how sunlight is actually white and not yellow. Natural sunlight is, in space, white. All the colors of the spectrum together. It wasn't until years later when I saw Chapu Light. I don't know what that is. Am I saying that right? I have no idea. Chapu by Felipe Stark. I think they say that. I don't know what. I'm gonna stop. In art school, that it clicked. Yellow light is what we usually get from the traditional incandescent lamps or human-made light. I don't think it would be a coincidence that Kizaru's powers is the only Logia that science has managed to replicate in the story. That's why I think this fight is kind of a clash between natural light, the sun, the Nika, and the domesticated light, electricity. And if the fruits sort of choose their users or influence them, it's pretty meaningful that Kizaru end up with this controlled light power. On top of that, it's just about seeing two monsters go at it. One moving at literal light speed, the other one being one of the toughest beings around. Someone who can see the future and stand toe-to-toe with Kaido. It's a battle between order and chaos/playfulness. You kind of get the sense of where he's going at right now about the themes of natural and unnatural. I'm not too sure if that's what Oda has in mind for Kizaru's powers per se, when it comes to the man-made light, the light beams and the layers and so on, versus what is naturally freely abundant in the space around us. You watching the screen, my monitors, my lights, and so on and so forth. This is the Kizaru around us, but that man-made light that we have versus the actual sunlight we go outside, two different types of light. One is more free. Sunlight is radiant in all directions. It's omnidirectional. And that is a sign of freedom at your fullest potential. But man-made light, whether it be again through your screen, my monitors, these lights, is condensed, it's focused. So this idea of the lights is actually pretty interesting. Can't say it actually came out in the fight itself in a meaningful way, but just that thought process alone I think is pretty interesting because it shows you the level of detail that even though it's only for a few minutes, if not even that, he's willing to dive pretty deep into underlining bedrock foundational concepts of the story and even the world around us and really bring that to motion with these two characters. And then folks say, oh, over animation. A lot of times, certain scenes, particularly certain stories they enjoy, and they want to make sure that the story is displayed in a really cool and dope, but also meaningful way. They think they're cooking, all right? It's not just, oh, flashing lights. No. Clearly more to it. And we're not even close to being done yet. So, regarding Kizaru's fighting style, Kizaru almost always starts fights using his legs if he can get away with it. His lazy justice makes him do minimal effort at first. He only pulls out his sword when he gets serious. But the best example is Kizaru versus Rayleigh. To be fair, it's not necessarily a Kizaru thing to be lazy. It's more of Kuzan's thing, where Kuzan's sense of justice was lazy. But on the flip side, Kizaru's not like a Kainu, where Kainu has absolute justice. So you'll see like a Kainu, he will Meigo you, hellhound you, Meigo off the gate. Kuma knows that firsthand. In terms of Kizaru, that unclear and uncertain justice leads to hesitation. And then so when he kicks first, you can argue it's not in the sense or in the vein of he's lazy, but more so he's probing. He's not too sure where to go from here, so he defaults to an automatic kick. But I do see what he's getting at there. Originally, there was a fight scene where Luffy and Kizaru were fighting hand to hand before entering the cloud. The idea behind it was to, one, expand the cloud with their footwork, but also show Kizaru slowly realizing that Gear 5 Luffy is another version of Gear 4 Luffy. And half measures aren't going to cut it, which makes him go from using his feet like he did against Gear 4 to using his sword. So he even thought about the previous fight between these two and how Kizaru was using mostly his footwork and he was blocking, but Kizaru wasn't going all out up until Luffy goes Gear 5, and then he realized, okay, fine, I can't hold back now because it's Gear 5 Luffy who really can hold back, you know what I'm saying? For Kizaru's movements without the sword, I pulled a lot from Taekwondo, like high kicks aiming at the head or upper body. Barely any low kicks. This is very similar to the idea that we saw him go through for the S-Hawk scene with Zoro and Luffy. He did incorporate various sorts of martial arts style in S-Hawk's fighting techniques when he tried to take out Zoro. There was immaturity in how he was operating, kind of showing you that, yeah, Zoro can easily kind of, not easily, but he can weave through it and see what's going on because there was too many flashy movements that S-Hawk was doing, and those wasted movements were a sign of his immaturity. And with Kizaru, keep in mind that I think all Marines that are higher, all Marines that are higher rung Marines, they all train their bodies in some sort of 6 power, some sort of Rokushiki. That is the predominant martial arts style in the world One Piece for the Marines, at least. So him being able to move his body in various athletic ways or martial arts techniques, whether let's say be in Taekwondo or Capoeira or karate even, these things are very possible for someone like Kizaru. Since he often fights with his hands in his pockets, it made sense that he'd have a footwork heavy style. When he switches to his sword fighting, I went with something closer to a long sword / greatsword, not really kendo, even though you could argue for it based on the manga. To me, his relaxed stance and the design of his sword felt more like a great sword user. So the idea was early on, small, efficient movements, thrust over big swings. As the fight goes on, he starts losing his cool, he throws bigger, heavier attacks. But Luffy matches him and even starts playing him like a pinball. So like when Luffy starts to like kind of sleep inside of Kizaru, starts to weave, then you get the after images, more weaving, more dodging, it's crazy, right? At a certain point, Kizaru figures out he's not going to win head on if Luffy just dodges everything, so he tries another approach, kind of like Luffy vs. NL in Skypiea, attacking the environment to bypass future sight. This is something that it's actually a very, very cool concept, but he didn't have it in the cut, and he continues. In a deleted cut, one of the Kizaru clones sneaks behind while Luffy is still fending the main one from afar. Then comes the part where he grazes Luffy by bouncing a sword strike off a cloud instead of going straight at him. So there's that one scene of Kizaru, he kind of like really swings back, like that sort of detail swing before Luffy gets cut across the cheek. So initially it was not Kizaru just doing that straight up. It was more so he ricocheted a sword because Luffy was in future sight form. He was just dodging, weaving, moving. Light speed doesn't matter. I see the future. But in this situation here, when Luffy does the all around galling around him in the cloud, and then Kizaru has that detailed swing. It's after that attack, Kizaru sees an opening, Luffy looks behind him, and then his cheek gets cut. So Chansard's first view of how to do it is actually really interesting about being able to use the environment more so to take care of a future sight user. In the same way how NL, when he fought against Luffy, he was adapting to Luffy's ability to hit him very quickly. That's why he figured out that you could actually stab Rubber, one, and do damage to him. And then two, he had his eyes closed and started to use this as mantra, the observation haki, a lot more often to sense what Luffy was going to do. What happens is that Luffy says, okay, you know what I'm gonna do? I'm going to go full on octopus mode and just start hitting at the wall, the golden wall behind that sort of throne area, and then some of the ricochets start to hit NL. So what Luffy did to NL and Skypiea is what Kizaru was gonna do to Luffy in some sense, to try and bypass the future sight. So once again, attacking the environment to bypass future sight. In a deleted cut, one of the Kizaru clones sneaks behind while Luffy is still fending the main one from afar. Then comes the part where he grazes Luffy by bouncing a sword strike off the cloud instead of going straight at him. After that, Luffy tries to get some space, scattering everyone in the hope of blasting the original, but it seems it didn't work. Where could the original be? Then we transition to the Ultrason part. So after Luffy realizes, okay, hold on, there's holograms here, and the holograms placed early in the arc, where early in the arc, he tried to eat that food, but it was hologram. It wasn't real. But then again, what is really real? And then you see Alice actually touch that with her light pressure gauntlet. So you see that idea brought to the forefront again. Now, the Ultrason stuff is when he goes back into giant form, Gigant form, and then he kind of like blows all the clones away at one point in time. On Luffy's side of things, Luffy's fighting style has always been super instinctive and based on people he fought. He learned mostly by sparring with Ace and Sabo or roughhousing with Garp, who fights like he's a boxer. Over time, in the manga, Luffy feels like a pretty all-around MMA fighter with boxing at his core, given Garp, using punches and kicks, some grabs, but not many open hand techniques. True. That's more of a Fishman, Karate, and Robin sort of thing. With Gear 5, though, there's a twist. Like literally with that Dawn Whip, because he goes hard with that Dawn Whip. With Gear 5, though, there's a twist. I thought it would make sense to mix in a couple of other styles. Capoeira, because of its connection to Brazil, where Oda took inspiration from, and of course Luffy is like Brazilian, and its ties to the idea of freedom. Plus, it gives Luffy that bouncy, aerial, and grounded playful motion that fits Gear 5. I like that. Drunken Fist. After fighting Kaido, who uses drunken style moves, it would make sense for Luffy to pick up a little of that. Also, the chaotic, unpredictable feel of drunken fighting is perfect for the vibe of Gear 5. So like, you do have martial arts that's incorporated into this fight scene, but it's done on a Looney Tunes Gear 5 level, not the sort of like Rock Lee Naruto Part 1 level. We're talking about like a Night Deity and a man that moves at light speed here. So it's still a foundation because we have seen Luffy use at times fancy footwork for sure. But now it's just in the clouds fighting against Kizaru at light speed. And the idea of learning new things as you go along in the journey is also something that we do see in the story at times. At this point in the story, Luffy isn't really trying to be Kizaru.
What the fuck?
Now, Chansard said this line right here, and that got people power scaling people. Yeah, my people. People were yapping because what? What are you saying? People forget what the mission was. The mission is an escort mission. It's an escort mission to try and make sure that Dr. Vegapunk, at least one of them, doesn't die. The idea was to protect the Vegapunks. Chansard understands the drill here. At this point in the story, Luffy isn't really trying to beat Kizaru. He's just stalling him. He's dodging, teasing, keeping things light, only pulling a name attack once Kiki, crazy name for Kizaru, actually managed to land a hit. And that's when we do see him do the Dawn Whip once he gets grazed. He literally, at several points in the fight, held Kizaru in his palm. This is...
That's true.
And we see later on, once he has a full stomach, once he's at full power, he has a full stomach. Just squeezing a bit harder, Kizaru coughs up blood. And then Kizaru gets that frisbee disc treatment. I continue though. The idea was to transition from drunken fist, dodging with erratic and playful movement, doing a kind of sleeping fairy form-esque motion into an alternative standing, sleeping air hat into Kizaru after he gets his sword to push him back a bit, mixing with some capoeira jumps. So that one scene of when he's kind of like sleeping on Kizaru, that's actually him sort of pushing him back to gain some space so he can actually dodge more effectively. The idea of actually being able to like do a sleeping deflect, that's crazy. A sleeping pushback, and that motion of with the drunken fist movements, Kizaru can't really comprehend what's going on in terms of Luffy's fighting style. It's a fighting style that does work pretty damn well with someone who is as free and as zany as Luffy. Will most folks understand that? No. Do they have to? No, because it's Luffy just having fun, essentially. Come the end of the damn day, it's Luffy having a damn good time in the midst of this fight. Even though a lot of these fights are tooth and nail, to the wire, life and death. Kaido and Luffy, a prime example of that. Remember what they said to each other in chapter 1036. Both Luffy and Kaido were having a lot of fun. Oh yeah, it was tooth and nail. Kaido damn near kills Luffy, but it's a hell of a lot of fun when they're going tooth and nail with everything on the line. Hell of a lot of fun. You see how Luffy, how he operates in that sort of schema too. A lot of pilots for sure are in that same mode. Marines, a lot less so, but pirates, a lot of them do that. Something else I tried to achieve is to give a Typhoon feeling to that last named attack. This is the Dawn Whip. When other Yonko use named attacks, it usually felt like a cataclysm. Correct. I wanted to try and give that grand, large scale feeling to Luffy, although, oh lordy, the sound design. The sound design is the one thing I kind of criticized the episode 4 too. Everyone knows it needs updated for sure, without damn doubt. The Typhoon feeling though is something that you do get when Kizaru looks up. You have the Dawn Whip, big cloud, breaks apart over the island. You see it kind of swirl, and that's all before Ota kind of takes over the scene. But it's a really good shot of that sort of cataclysm feeling. You for sure get that on the roof piece where you had Big Mom and Kaido putting on a show. When Big Mom does the God of Lightning Tenjin, and in the entire area, it's literally just raining thunderbolts. And then Kid says, is she some sort of natural disaster? When emperors make moves like that, you kind of get that feeling of, yeah, they are almost like forces of nature. And he's trying to duplicate that scene with Luffy doing the Dawn Whip in that massive cloud, how the cloud kind of disperses, kind of forms almost like a giant hurricane, typhoon. Yeah, for sure, without doubt. And that's a very good shot. And that thought process is also true to form, I think, with how Emperor should operate. So Chansard gets it. And just the fact that Chansard even thought of it in the first place, I think is a really damn cool thing, undeniably. But these are all moves I want to try and develop a bit more. If I get the chance for it, ultimately my next text dumps are here for people like me who after reading a book are like, I love to know more outside of the text things, what the writer's thought process was, etc. That's why I'm here. That's why I'm here too. That's why I'm here too. If you've ever watched Baki, not the memes, Baki is built like this, where characters, they fight. And at first it feels it's kind of like ridiculous. It has no purpose, no meaning, but in almost most situations, a lot of the fights themselves, the choreography, techniques that they're doing, how they're doing them, and so on and so forth, they have so much substance and history and value, albeit sometimes like kind of BS, I ain't gonna lie to you. But at other times, it really is deep and thought-provoking. Again, most folks don't care about that. They're just like, yo, give me a good show. And listen, at the end of the day, it's a damn good show. It is kind of me feeding my 16-year-old self being so hooked into the Matrix movies, rewatching again and again the fights in slow motion to try and understand exactly how precisely what move they use and why they chose to use the move in this situation here. Obviously, if I started talking about storyboard thinking, narrative intent, and stuff we discuss and plan with Matsumi-san, it would take 100 more tweets to end it all. Despite my perfectionism, I am so happy we had fun constructing this scene together with Matsumi-san. So those are Vincent Chansard's notes on how he got from point A to point B, on how him and company were able to create a really phenomenal fight scene between Luffy and Kizaru, one that's going to be, I think, remembered for a very long time. And is it perfect? No, nothing in life is ever perfect. Of course not. He's not someone that's like, okay, I'm the greatest ever of all time, everyone stand down, I'm the Michael Jordan of animation. No. However, the fact of the matter is that it's not easy to do what he does, and not just in terms of animating it, but the thought process to get to why he's doing what he's doing, let alone him talking to Matsumi-san and then having a back and forth there and really kind of breaking down what the finishing product is going to be for just those few moments. On that note, let me know your stance on the subject matter at hand. If you enjoy your boy's video, kindly give it a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, click on that bell to join the notification squad. I'm gonna catch you guys and gals on the flip side. Be easy, take care, have a nice one.
See you. Bye bye.